Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Countdown to Infinity. This is episode 13. Today, we are talking about Captain America Civil War. This is a big one, although I'm hoping we could maybe keep it a little shorter than the Avengers one, because we talked for a long time on that one.
Well, I'm planning to see Pacific Rim after we record tonight, so hopefully I don't miss my show.
More like Pacific Poop. I don't actually know.
Specifically,
I don't actually know if that's true or not.
Hope that I don't miss my showtime. Yeah, no.
All right, well,
apparently it's good. Apparently it's not as good as the first one, but
all right,
I'm here for big robots. So
all right, that's fair. Let's get into this. Hey, I'm James, and he's Matt. Hey, Matt.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Do you like this movie?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're done. Let's go.
Yep. All right.
Now
cool.
You can see your movie.
Man, I should have bought a ticket to the 7:00 show.
No. Okay, so today we've got Captain America Civil War. This is, I mean, look, most people just call this movie Avengers 3.
2.5.
Yeah, 2.5, and they're not really wrong. Like,
They're a little wrong.
So here's the thing. They're a little wrong, but they're not entirely wrong.
Yeah.
Right? But first, hey, this one is directed by the Russo brothers.
It is.
And that's a big deal because these are the guys who are directing Infinity War. So one could argue, if you enjoyed the direction that this movie took, which is to say, if you enjoyed the way this movie was put together and presented and made and shot, then chances are you're probably going to like what they're doing over with Infinity War. But I guess time will tell. We've got pretty much everybody in this movie. We've got Chris Evans, we've got Robert Downey Jr., we've got Scarlett Johansson, we've got Sebastian Stan, we got Anthony Mackie, Don Cheadle, Jeremy Renner, Chadwick Boseman, first appearing, by the way.
Yes.
Chadwick Boseman. We've got Elizabeth Olsen, Paul Rudd back, Emily Van Camp. Who's Emily Van Camp again?
Agent 13.
Thank you. I thought that's what it was, but I wasn't sure. Tom Holland,
first appearance.
Our buddy Tom, first appearance. And we got William Hurt, and there's a lot of people in this one.
Paul Bettany,
Frank
Grillo, Daniel Bruhl. We got everybody.
We got literally everybody. I guess who plays it's William Hurt. That is
General Ross. Returning from the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, from a long time ago. Like, deep cut, like, I would probably not be surprised if I went back and talked to the James who watched this for the first time. I'm pretty sure that guy probably didn't even put that together at the time.
Oh, wow.
Maybe. I don't know. Like, we're talking years between these movies, right? Between Incredible Hulk and Civil War, and I hadn't seen Incredible Hulk at the time that this movie came out, which was May 6th. 2016.
It'd have been 8 years since.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I'm just taking a guess.
Yeah.
What did this movie make? $1.153 billion. It runs for 147 minutes. So here's a fun piece of math that I've never done before. 1,153,000,000. My calculator doesn't wait. Turn it sideways. 0 divided by 147. This movie made $7.8 million per minute.
Nice.
That's kind of insane.
Yeah. If you calculate it that way, which only an insane person would do.
Oh, no. Come on. I assume that's how Box Office Mojo keeps track of all of its really important stats.
It's per minute of film runtime and not per minutes of film actually broadcast. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or per seat.
All right. Let's dive into this.
That's $750 million per eyeball per person.
Yeah, that's true. All right, Matt, run us down. What happened in this movie? You have 3 minutes. Go.
3 minutes. Have you seen the breakdown of how long it takes me to explain these things?
Yeah, you did Ant-Man really fucking fast.
Well,
Sorry,
that's true.
But
you
come
swore
on.
again. All right, so back in 1991, it turns out that the Winter Soldier, James Buchanan Barnes, is dispatched by Hydra to kill Tony Stark's parents. We learned that Tony Stark's parents were killed by Hydra back in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Anyhow, so that happens back in 1991. Now in the future, the Avengers are, well, the newish Avengers, the team as it existed at the end of Age of Ultron, is out in the world doing things, and they are on a mission to Lagos. They are following up on Crossbones and his various goings-on. He attacks a medical research facility, makes off with a biological weapon. They chase him through Lagos, take out most of his team, and he tries to blow himself up to kill Steve Rogers. The Scarlet Witch manages to contain the explosion, shoots it up into the sky where it explodes and blows out an entire floor of an office building. It turns out that in that office building was a goodwill mission from Wakanda, and that goodwill mission is killed. So the UN convenes a meeting to write up what is known as the Sokovia Accords, which is establishing a UN panel to oversee and control the Avengers. And the various Avengers team members are either for or against this. Tony's in favor because over the course of his time in the movies, he's sort of come to realize that he can't even trust himself, and that the Avengers oversteps all the time. Whereas Steve is just like, I really feel like we are the best people equipped to understand what we want to do, or what we're able to do, and if we are under the thumb of a UN panel, then sometimes there are going to be things that we feel we need to act on and we won't be able, and sometimes they will send us into zones where we don't think we should be there, and that we give up our right to choose if we sign this accord. So that splits them up. So Steve learns that Peggy Carter has passed away, so he goes off to London to attend her funeral. Tony signs. Black Widow attends the UN convention where they're actually signing and ratifying the Sokovia Accords, and the UN convention is bombed. It is bombed while King T'Chaka of Wakanda is giving his speech to the UN about the Accords. He dies in the explosion, and T'Challa becomes the new king, and vows revenge against whoever it is that bombed the UN. Footage surfaces of what appears to be Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier leaving the truck that contained the bomb in front of the UN. So an international manhunt is set out to track down the Winter Soldier. Of course, the UN sends in, of course, this brings Steve back into the fold as he realizes that if like police forces and what have you are sent after Bucky, most of them will die, and they will try to kill him on sight. And he also realizes that this is going to escalate to the point where the Avengers will be sent in, and he's worried that if he doesn't talk Bucky down, members of the Avengers team will die. So he rolls back out against the law and goes to find Bucky. He does find Bucky. There he encounters Black Panther. Black Panther tries to kill Bucky. Cap and Sam manage to essentially prevent this while still trying to chase Bucky down. This all comes to a head as they sort of reach a stalemate, fighting in the middle of a highway, and are all taken into custody by the police. They are then pulled back to, where? Germany somewhere. At which point they are all taken to like a UN facility. Bucky is put in confinement, and a psychologist is brought in to do a psych evaluation of Bucky. So the one plot thread that's been going on alongside here is there's been this mysterious figure who's been pulling strings and doing things. He found a Hydra agent and tortured him to get a book that had a bunch of code words that are used to activate the Winter Soldier. And just as he arrives, an EMP blast goes off that knocks out all the power in I don't remember where they were, but in this German city. And he has taken the place of the psychologist, and he activates the Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier busts out of the facility, kills a bunch of people along the way. All the various Avengers try to stop him, but they are caught off guard, and things are shaken up. But like Steve and Falcon get away, and T'Challa is like, all right, well, I'm going to go get him. And Tony is left a little beaten and battered. So Steve is off in the wind. Bucky is off in the wind. And, so at this point, Cap and Falcon do manage to subdue Bucky, and they get him into this like warehouse where they just interrogate him to try and find out what exactly is going on. So they do. They realize that they are going to be hunted by the Avengers, so they need to. It comes out in this discussion that this guy that has been pulling strings has now got the information he needs to go to an old Hydra facility from back in 1991 and activate a team of Winter Soldier-style super soldiers that have been in cryogenic sleep in this compound in Siberia for decades, since they were put in cryo sleep. So they realize that the guy who's been pulling all the strings, that's where he's headed, so they head off to stop him. Along the way, they encounter Tony. They get the message to Tony that, in fact, this guy has been pulling the strings, did frame Bucky for the bombing, and has been pitting them against each other. So they head off to Siberia. Tony also sort of like skips General Ross's oversight and goes to catch up with them in Siberia. They meet. They catch up with Zemo, and he tells them his life story of how he's trying to bring them low because his family was killed by in Sokovia when the city was dropped on them by the Avengers. I guess that happens a little later. He basically gives them a videotape. It turns out he's actually killed all of these Winter Soldiers, but he shows them a videotape of Bucky killing Iron Man's parents, and of course Tony looks at Steve and is like, "Did you know?" And Steve says, "Well, I didn't know it was him, but did you know?" "Yes, I did know." And at that point, Tony flies into a rage, trying to kill Bucky. Steve, of course, being Bucky's friend, tries to stop Tony from killing Bucky. The Black Panther shows up and apprehends Zemo, the agent who has been pulling the strings. At that point, Zemo tells him his life story of how the Avengers dropped a city on his family, and the Avengers all have it out. Cap ultimately does subdue Iron Man and breaks the armor in his chest, but not until after Bucky has his robotic arm blown off. And the relationship between Cap and Tony is damaged severely. As Steve walks off, Tony, yells back at him, "You don't deserve that shield. My dad made that shield." And so Captain America drops the shield, leaving behind his mantle of Captain America, and sort of wanders off into the sunset. And yeah, there is along the way a big fight where all of the various Avengers team, as they have split into their factions, face off against each other at an airport just before the sort of final act happens. But it's mostly there for spectacle and it only gives you a little bit of plot development. So I have mostly just skipped over that, but that's basically the gist of it. It is a pretty straightforward, Puppet Master thriller style thing, except it's pitting all the Avengers against one another. The end.
The end. Yeah, that was a pretty good job.
It was okay.
I
missed the entire airport fight, but well.
I mean, it's a big fight at the airport.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome.
It's super awesome.
But yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, yeah, this is definitely it is definitely a Puppet Master kind of movie. And this is I would agree. I would say that this is one that relies on you to be able to let go maybe more than normal with these kind of movies, where you just have to be like, yep, that's fine, it's a movie.
Yeah, I've heard that before, where it's like, this requires more suspension of disbelief, that he could know all this and pull out these strings, and it's not any more far-fetched than any other Puppet Master. I know what you're gonna do because I've studied you for years and I can predict the actions you're gonna take.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though, is that he hasn't studied these people for years. Like, we're talking about him getting revenge from something that happened
A year ago.
like like basically a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, he explicitly says that I have done nothing but study you for the last year.
Sure. I mean, it's just, it's one of those things where a whole lot of things need to go exactly right.
Sure.
For his plan to work. But you just have to let that go.
Oh, yeah.
Like, these are not the kind of movies, I was having this conversation just on stream today. People were like, I bet you're like, do you like Civil War? I bet you kind of don't. And I'm like, I like all of these movies because I am capable of completely shutting off that part of the brain that needs to be shut off to enjoy these movies. Mm-hmm. Because I think it needs to happen.
Yeah.
Because these movies are flawed and they're silly, but they're supposed to be flawed and silly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when it comes to suspension of disbelief, thinking that a like highly trained special agent whose entire job is like espionage and doing hits and political assassinations and political manipulation, that he could over the course of a year figure out how these like really broad strokes characters are going to act when put into a certain situation, that requires less suspension of disbelief than like talking raccoons.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I don't feel like that is he's a secret, like super secret agent that does that kind of thing. It's not that out of his like oeuvre to be able to do that.
I would argue that they don't make a huge deal of what his past is.
No, they gloss over it a little bit. But
yeah, and I think that's a problem, is because I think most people just see this as a father and a husband and a son who is out to seek vengeance on this group of people that wronged him.
Yes, rather than what they establish him as, the leader of Sokovia's elite kill squad.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, they do gloss over that. But all right, let's get this conversation started proper on this movie. Matt, I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. What would you call a group of U.S.-based enhanced individuals who routinely ignore sovereign borders and inflict their will wherever they choose, and who, frankly, seem unconcerned with what they leave behind?
So I take a little bit of exception to the last clause of that line. Because they seem pretty concerned with what they leave behind. I mean, at this point in the franchise, we haven't gotten to Homecoming yet, but we learned that collateral damage, like the collateral damage department exists and is owned by Tony Stark. Like, he has a business which exists solely to go around and clean up their mess. And they make a point of the fact in all the previous movies that mandate number one for the Avengers everywhere they go is to save as many people as they possibly can. And obviously there's collateral damage that occurs in these fights. And obviously, one of the things I like about this movie is that it treats it that aspect of it is treated relatively well, where even if you have this force that goes from unilaterally decides to go into these places and engage in combat in populated areas, even if they are trying to save as many people as possible, most people are only viewing them at arm's length, and so they only see the destruction left behind and not the actual actions being undertaken.
Right.
And so, a lot of people would fear that and want someone to blame and demand that there be more oversight of this group. So I think that, the construction of that element of this storyline is actually handled relatively well. But General Ross should know better.
Right.
They are literally sitting there, head in their hands, oh my God, we screwed up so bad. When he walks in. And then he's like, well, you guys don't seem very bothered by this. They're literally, around, sitting around being like, Jesus, you guys, we really screwed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So...
Okay, so I guess let's remove that final clause and just sort of talk about the first little bit of his question.
I totally don't think he's wrong. Like, that's
Yeah.
one of the things I like about this movie is so there's like a bunch of things I like in the initial setup of this movie, which is like the desire for the Sokovia Accords is totally understandable and relatable within the context of the world they've created to this point, right? Like,
Yep.
yeah, the Avengers are dropping cities out of the sky. Like, they're not putting the cities in the sky, but they're definitely dropping them out of the sky. And so the fear that the people on Earth would have is totally reasonable. And I feel like Tony is definitely. I wish they had put a little bit finer point on it, because he gives a speech where it's like, we can't be trusted, but it's really he can't be trusted, and like he should point the finger at himself a little bit more than he does. Because like literally the last movie, he created an artificial intelligence that nearly destroyed the Earth. And then solved it by doubling down by creating another artificially intelligent being to kill the first artificially intelligent being, because he didn't know what else to do. Like, Tony is completely in need of oversight, and he's extrapolating that to the rest of the team, but it's his own insecurity talking. But I think he's naturally in that play. Like, I don't think it's out of character for him at this point in the franchise to be in the position he's in. Another thing that I don't think is out of character is the movie breezes through it quickly, and it could have, again, made a stronger point of it. But when Steve says he's not going to sign the Accords, he is essentially retiring. Like, he's ready to stop being Captain America. It's not him, like, when he's like, I can't do it, that is not him being like, I can't do it, I'm gonna go rogue right now, and you can't stop me. That's him being like, I can't do it, you're gonna have to go on without me. And it just happens that, like, he's like, I can't do it, I can't sign, and then leaves, and then immediately gets pulled back in by Bucky's reappearance. Right. And so there's not a lot of time to breathe on that, where it, like, he doesn't have a chance to actually be like, okay, well, I guess I'm not an Avenger anymore. What do I do next? But the implication of his choice is that he is going to stop and not continue doing it. And then it comes back later that he doesn't after he gets pulled back in by Bucky, it sort of comes out that he doesn't really feel like he can stop. he sort of comes to the realization that, like, yeah, I see a situation that's headed south and I have to insert myself into it. It's just in my nature. But at that point, he's already, like, he was pulled in by his personal connection to Bucky, not a desire to intervene in to save Bucky and to save the other Avengers, not by just, like, a personal desire to do the right thing independent of that. So, like, he's ready to walk away, and or more or less ready to walk away, and that's in character for Steve at this point, because he's been betrayed by oversight and by, like, shadowy organizations so many times that it feels natural again that he'd be suspicious of that.
I mean, it's interesting because regardless of how both Stark and Rogers get to where they are at the end of this film, they at some point kind of cross paths with each other and become the person that they were when they started. Like, which is to say that by the end, like, when they start, Tony's all about, like, yeah, screw you guys, I'm Iron Man, I've privatized world peace, you don't need anybody but me, I'm good, to, oh god, I need oversight.
Yeah.
And then you have Captain America, who started in the U.S. Army. There is no more, like, there's nowhere else you can go with more, restraint and rules and regulations. Yeah. And he was never burned by the army, right?
No.
So, and by the end of this movie, he's kind of like, okay, I just need to, I will do whatever I need to do.
He kind of was burned by the army back in the first Captain America movie, where he's like, all right, I'm a super soldier now. And then they sent him on USO. And then he was like, all right, this entire, like, platoon is trapped behind any enemy lines along with Bucky. Let's go save them. And they're like, hell no. And then he has to go do it himself.
Yeah.
Like he did get burned by the army a little bit, but he like, you're right. He starts in a place where like his position is absolutely duty to like his
I mean,
like duty to the law and duty to his country and that kind of thing.
I think you could fairly simply boil it down to it is order versus chaos, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not to those degrees, but when you first meet Captain America, he is about order.
Yes.
And when you first meet Tony Stark, he's more or less about chaos. And by the end of this, they look a little bit different, order and chaos, I would argue, but they're still there, which is pretty interesting. I mean, look, there's a lot of videos out there. I would really highly recommend checking out. There's a channel, a movie sort of analysis channel that I watch called Wisecrack. And like a month or two ago, they released a video called "The Political Philosophy of Captain America: Civil War." I would highly recommend going to check it out, just because I don't want to get too deep on the who was right and who was wrong. Mainly because there is clearly no right answer to that question.
They both have points.
Yeah, they both have points, and they both have bad points. They both have good points and bad points. Yeah. And a lot of it is emotion, but a lot of it is some pretty interesting philosophy, and I would highly recommend checking it out. I'll put the links below. But again, yeah, it's just called "The Political Philosophy of Captain America: Civil War" over on Wisecrack. It's a really good video.
Nice. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's good. You should go check it out after we're done here. So I guess apart from the core of this film, which is this, two opposing sides coming to head, what did you think of the movie overall, structure wise, pacing wise? Like, is it a good movie? Like, is it a well made movie?
Yes. This movie is super stylish. I love the look of it. I love the title cards. Like, the opening of this movie had me from second one, when it's it just opens on the plain of Siberia, and it's just like, I don't remember what the title card says now, but it's like Siberia 1990 or 1991, I think, is the opening title card, right?
Yeah.
And that little, like, what's the word? That little, like, thing where they go back to the title card every time they change location. Like, that's super cool. The most of the action in the movie is shot really well. They doubled down on the superness of of Captain America and Bucky, and like how hard people hit. And like that whole first fight scene where they're up against Crossbones, like, that's just super people doing super things for like 10 straight minutes, and it's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah. And then the chase with Black Panther and Captain America and Falcon and Bucky, again, awesome. Like, that whole thing is super cool. The big fight at the airport is, again, it's like, it's fun and it's energetic and there's lots going on, and you get good character moments with everybody, and it's like all spectacle and it's super fun. And then the final fight between Captain America and Iron Man and Bucky at the end, like, they're cribbing images from the comic book, which is awesome, and making it look like not awkward, like making it look natural and making it look intense and exciting and emotional, and like, it's dark and it's brutal, but it's not grimdark. It's just you feel for what the characters are going through in that scene.
I think they did a really, really great job of setting up that fight scene, that final showdown between Captain America and Iron Man, and how, it is a brutal, emotional scene. Like, these are two people who are now properly fighting, and when you compare that to the airport fight, the airport fight it's fun. There's obviously stakes there, but nobody is there to hurt one another.
Right?
They're
just there
nobody
to
wants to get hurt
way.
in that fight. And to go from that to that final fight with Tony and Steve is it's hard. Like that's a hard scene to watch, or it's a hard fight to watch because you love both of these characters.
Yeah, there's one detail in that fight that I really like that like I picked up more on watching it last night, which is also again mentally where the characters are at that point, because what brings them into that fight is different, right? Like Tony goes into that fight wanting to kill Bucky. That is his, like, he's gone off the handle. I don't care. He killed my mom. Bucky's gonna die. Cap gets into that fight just to stop Tony from killing Bucky. Cap doesn't really want to hurt Iron Man. He's just doing whatever it takes to stop him from killing Bucky. And if that means like killing him, then so be it. But it's like that's not where he's at. He's in a defensive position going into that fight. And at the end of that fight, in the very final scene where Cap he hammers his shield against his mask like 3 or 4 times until it breaks off, and then raises the shield one more time, you see Iron Man like go to protect his head, because like Tony is afraid that Steve is gonna kill him there. And of course, like, Steve is not. He's friends. He is just trying to incapacitate him. He's angry, but he's not murderously angry. And then he comes down and breaks the arc reactor. And like from an emotional point of view, like Tony has had his trust broken so much that he thinks his best friend on Earth is about to kill him. Like that's, and it's just a little reaction detail, but it's like that's a hell of a fight.
Yeah, I agree. How about we got some new characters in this one, both of which also have their own movie now.
Yes,
which is we get Black Panther.
Yep.
And we get Spider-Man.
Yeah, we do. Little Babbo Spider-Man. He's such a precious cinnamon roll.
Yeah, he is. I mean, so I think it's fair to say that Black Panther gets a little bit more setup, a little bit more meat in this movie. What with the killing of his father and all, and sort of the emotional investment of his character and what he means to this story. Whereas Spider-Man, he comes in and he's cute and he's funny, and I think it was a good way to bring him into this series. But it wasn't anything sort of as big as it was for Black Panther.
Yeah.
Do you like how both these characters were introduced in this film?
I do. Like one of the things I like, and it was one of the things that everybody was worried about when they announced that Spider-Man was joining the MCU, is like, oh, another intro. We're gonna have another origin story. And I just like the fact that they skip over that. They just bring him into this movie as an established superhero. Clearly, he's in his first few months as Spider-Man, but we know how Spider-Man becomes Spider-Man, so it's just like Tony's like, oh, okay, there's a Spider-Man in Queens. Let's go get him. And then the movie just drops him in and is like, oh yeah, Spider-Man exists. That's cool. Yeah. That's a good way to just be like, oh yeah, Spider-Man, he's a kid, whatever, he exists in Queens, he's small time compared to the rest of these guys. They basically do the same thing for Ant-Man in this, except that he already existed, like his movie had already happened, where at this point it's just like, okay, Ant-Man exists also. If you haven't seen the movie, whatever, here he is. He's again small time compared to these guys, but he's got a useful skill.
I think I would probably argue that, maybe they would have done it. I don't think there's a whole lot of characters you can do what they did with Spider-Man.
No, they definitely would have needed to have, they needed the origin story for Ant-Man, for instance.
Yeah, they needed the origin story with Ant-Man. I mean, you sort of get the start of Black Panther's origin story here, right?
They essentially lay it out.
Yeah, this is how this journey for this character begins, with the killing of his father. And we get that inside of this movie that has just all this other stuff going on, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. Like, you don't really, you kind of don't think of it that way, but there is an origin story in this movie. when it comes to Black Panther.
Yeah.
Which is pretty sweet. What else do we talk about?
Things,
Movie stuff?
Yeah.
Things and stuff. Do you got anything you want to chat about?
What do I want to chat about that we haven't chatted about already? Nah. Nothing's coming to mind.
Yeah,
You lead the
we're
way.
good.
Goofs?
I mean,
I don't know. Do we move on to Goofs?
No, I mean, I guess let's chat about the bad guy for a minute, because it would be rude not to talk about the bad
fair.
guy.
Yeah.
So the bad guy here was Zemo.
Yes.
We talked
Helmet Zemo.
briefly. Yeah, we talked briefly about him at the top of the show, in the sense that you kind of have to put aside the fact that everything needed to go right for this guy to get these characters in the position that he wanted him in. But I mean, this is not a terribly complex bad guy. This is a story of revenge, but it's to facilitate a much bigger story, right? Everything needs to go right for this guy, because we need everything to go right, because once everything goes right, we get that payoff that this movie is set out to deliver.
Right.
So you kind of just have to be like, it doesn't matter how silly or outlandish this guy's plan was. And to be honest, it wasn't that silly.
No.
Maybe there's a few small things here or there that you're like, well, okay, sure, why not? But again, you need all of these things to fall into place so that we get this, this civil war.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing I wanted to talk about, because I know that I haven't personally read the comics.
Mm-hmm.
How does this stack up to the comics?
It's way better. It's way better.
So what's the story with the comics?
Okay,
as quickly as possible.
So
really...
again, as quickly as possible. The gist of the comic books is that the New Warriors, a like 2-bit D-list superhero team, is filming a reality TV show, and they are chasing.
This is already stupid.
I know. They're filming a reality TV show in, I'm not going to be able to remember the name of the town, but a small town in the U.S., like Midwest, and they have chased down. Oh, I cannot remember the name of the bad guy, but the bad guy's power is that he blows up. So they've cornered him, and the Speedball, as a member of the New Warriors, like tries to capture him, like gets arrogant and thinks he can do it, tries to capture him, and the guy blows up. And in blowing up, he blows up an elementary school and takes out 600 children along with himself.
Jesus.
Yeah, and then goes on the run, because his power is that he blows up, but he doesn't die. So he runs off and gets away. And that turns public sentiment against the supers, right? Because they see these people being irresponsible for like press, and so they launch the Superhero Registration Act, wherein all heroes have to register their identities with the government of the United States in order to be allowed to continue to operate, and failure to register means that you will be sent to an interdimensional prison that was developed by Hank Pym and Mr. Fantastic. I'm not even kidding. That is straight up what it is. So, of course, Cap is like, this is extremely not cool. And Iron Man is like, but no, we actually have to do this, because if we don't, they will do something worse later on. Iron Man's storyline in the comic book is more or less the same. He's just a bigger jerk about it. Like, he goes way further.
Fair enough.
And anyhow, so Cap goes on the run and recruits a bunch of heroes, and Iron Man also basically... like, one of the things they lift is that at that point, Spider-Man is basically Iron Man's sidekick. So Iron Man talks Peter into revealing his secret identity at a press conference to show his support for the Superhero Registration Act. And he does that, and then Kingpin takes out a hit on him, but accidentally shoots Aunt May, and Aunt May nearly dies, and then Spider-Man, like, changes sides, and then as Aunt May is in hospital, like, bleeding to death in a coma, he gets super dark and, puts the black suit back on, and then goes out to try and kill the Kingpin, and... Tony and Iron Man fight, and in their first big blowout fight, Goliath dies. and all the heroes have a sad about that. And then they go off, and then like the anti-registration heroes discover this interdimensional prison, and then they go and break out all the supers that have been trapped in the prison, and then they all join the fight to stop Tony, and then there's another big fight, and then after the iconic moment of like Iron Man with the beam and Cap with the shield that's cribbed by the movie, after that they like realize that all the fighting they're doing is just like obliterating cities, and people are getting even angrier at them, and so Cap surrenders and is taken into custody and is sent for prosecution, and on his way to court is assassinated by Agent 13, who is like under mind control from who was it that mind controlled her? I don't remember. It was like one of the big bads from the Marvel comic universe had like mind controlled her, and so she murdered Captain America, and didn't realize and she snaps out of it while he's like bleeding to death on the steps of the courthouse, and at that point they were sort of like a couple, and so she like murders him and then immediately forgets that she's murdered him, realizes he's been murdered, and he dies in her arms.
Wow.
And then during all this also Zemo is put in charge. Baron Zemo or whatever from the comic books, being a very different character from the Zemo of this movie, is put in charge of the Thunderbolts and like collects a whole bunch of bad guys, including the now turned Speedball, who was who became Penance. He got so upset for what he had done trying to capture the guy that blows up that he changed his superhero identity because his powers changed, so they were fueled off of pain. So he built himself an armor suit that had like needles on the inside that would stab him and cause him to become to be able to fuel his powers off of the pain he was experiencing. And so the Thunderbolts with like Zemo and what's the name of Spider-Man Osborn, Norman Osborn, and like and Penance and like a bunch of different villains as this like Black Ops team that was operating sort of like in the gray area of the law. And a bunch of heroes like moved to Canada and then discovered that Canada had always had a superhero registration act, because of course we did.
What?
I'm not even kidding.
You need to wrap this up. My head's about to explode.
Civil War in the comics was dumb.
That's so stupid.
It was really funny. The best thing out of Civil War is the Thing moved to France. And so there's a shot of like the Thing sitting in a cafe wearing a beret. And yeah, like Civil War was real silly. There was one other thing that I was going to touch on. Civil War got Tony Stark voted Villain of the Year by IGN in 2006 or 7, as I recall.
Lol. You know you're doing it right when Iron Man is
the Villain of the Year the year before you launch the Marvel Cinematic Universe with an Iron Man movie. Yeah.
Jeez.
It was real silly. I have barely even scratched the surface of how silly it was.
Movie Bob.
Comics are weird.
Because, oh my god, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So
that's so stupid.
This movie takes like the central core of that idea that has some promise, and then basically like just chips all the nonsense away from it and forms it into like the best possible version of that story. So like this movie is way better than the comic book event of the same name.
All right. Cool. There's one other thing that I wanted to talk about before I guess we can get to the goofs and wrapping up and ranking this thing, which is I feel like I can't remember if it was last episode or a few episodes ago. It's probably during the Avengers. We talked about how I would personally ever be shocked if they properly killed off a character in this film series.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm talking about like one of the main ones, because I love Rhodey, and War Machine is great, but this movie would have hit so much harder if they had killed him off.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't
if there
like
had-
the construction of that event, like that moment in the movie. I find that like it's really contrived.
I mean, sure.
He did like Falcon didn't do anything wrong. All he did was move out of the way, and
And then what I never got was like, because afterwards Tony is talking to Vision. He's like, "How did that even happen?" And it's just like, because the Vision says like, "I got distracted." And I'm like, didn't even know that was possible, and all this weird. It's like, why? What?
No,
he targeted Falcon. He shot his laser beam. Falcon dodged it,
and hit Rhodey.
Happened to be perfectly in time with Rhodey.
Yeah.
And it's just like that's not you getting distracted. That's just Falcon moving out of the way of a freaking laser beam.
A freaking laser beam that Rhodey ordered Vision to shoot.
Yeah.
Like that whole scene is silly. The only salvageable moment in that entire salvageable is being over mean to it, but the best moment in that entire sequence is Falcon landing, going, "I'm sorry," and Tony shooting him with a repulsor.
Yes,
and
that
the
was a good
fall. He like flips entirely over, lands on his head, and then like folds over backwards.
Yeah.
But like they put it in because they needed to like add some, or they felt they needed to add some emotional weight to that fight, I guess. But it just ends up feeling super contrived.
And that's fair, and I'm sure that there's probably a better way for them to have done it. But that scene, that example is why I just don't see them doing it. Like, they were too afraid to kill off War Machine.
Well, they were too afraid to have one of their heroes kill off War Machine. Like,
yeah,
let's be clear about the scenario that they concocted.
Okay.
Like that scene exists because the point that like sentiment among the superheroes in the comic book started to turn was when they killed Goliath. Like he died in a super fight in like the comic event of the same name, and so they probably just to live up to expectation had felt like they had to put someone like in the position of maybe dying to get that same kind of effect where everybody realized they'd gone too far. And I guess they felt like they could do it without actually killing him. And I think they succeed. He doesn't die, and all of the heroes kind of realize they went too far. So that like the emotional purpose of that scene is served. But it does feel like a cop out from a filmmaking perspective.
But also, do you feel like I don't feel like that stopped anybody? Like,
well, it did. I mean, like at that point, it was it essentially stopped everybody because all the heroes that were on Cap's side at that point surrender and like get put in floaty ocean prison.
Sure.
Which was like part of the plan at that point, but they like that is essentially like Falcon stops and is like, "I am sorry, I did not mean for that to happen." And Vision is like, "Well, dang, oops." And Tony is now like, and Tony is now like, "Oh geez, my other best friend on Earth is now like paralyzed from the waist down. Like this has gotten serious." Because like that the entire fight leading up to that point was play fighting, right? Like they are there to be in each other's way, and they get a little angrier at each other throughout the course of that fight as things spiral out of control, and they throw a fuel truck at Rhodey, and Vision drops the control tower on them, and Black Widow changes sides, and like they're pulling their punches right up until the point where they're not. And at that point, and then somebody gets hurt, and it's no longer fun and games. And then we move into the final act of the film where it's actually like a mortal fight. And like I feel like that works. Functionally, I feel like it works, even if from a filmmaking, like from a sort of inside baseball point of view, it feels like a cop out.
Right. All right. I will sort of side with you on that one, but I'm still of the opinion that they're too scared to kill anybody off.
I could see Thanos killing somebody.
Who do you?
I don't know. I don't want to say goodbye to any of them, so I don't want to put a name on the board, right?
I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We talk about this next week because next week is Doctor Strange. But we live and exist in the universe now where time travel is a thing. So nothing the hell matters.
Yeah. But I still I don't know. They released a new round of posters today, and Hawkeye's not in any of them again. But my suspicion is that they're not showing Hawkeye, but just based on things people like the Russos have said, where it's like he's on his own journey in this movie. They're just hiding him because I suspect he's not Hawkeye anymore. I suspect he's someone else.
I will 100. I mean, obviously we don't know what the hell's going on, but I will be incredibly surprised if they kill off Hawkeye, who is the one character. I mean, I guess there are a few characters, but the one character we actually know is like this, super gentle husband father character, and it's just like, wow, okay, savage.
Yeah.
Then I will on this podcast, I guess on the last episode, be like, kudos, Marvel, you did it. And maybe I'll try to be fighting back tears when I say it because I agree. I don't want anybody to die because I like all these people too much. Yeah, but I will give kudos where kudos is due.
I don't know. By the same token, I feel like if they do kill Hawkeye, he is the character that they will kill that the fewest people will care about, so it'll have less impact. Like if they're gonna kill somebody, I think they kill somebody meaningful.
Nah, I think you could easily kill off. I think you could kill Scarlet Witch,
but I don't think they will.
No, I'm just saying you could.
Yeah.
I would be.
If they want it to hurt, if they actually want it to hurt, it's got to be one of the big ones.
Well, yeah.
It's got to be. It's probably not Cap. It could very well be Iron Man.
I would be blown away if A, they kill him off, and B, stick with it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the sticking with it is the second part of that equation. But
that's the problem.
I suspect that if they had better. It will grate me forever if they kill somebody in a movie and then undo it in the same film.
Sure. Maybe they'll undo it in the second.
Right. Like if they were to kill, say, Iron Man in Infinity War and then time travel him back into existence in Infinity War and not in Avengers 4, I would be so mad. He's got to stay dead for at least the end of that movie.
Yeah, well, you got to let your audience think about that for a year.
Yeah.
Not 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. All right. Let's start wrapping this up because I smell dinner.
Oh.
We've got the Goofs.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of Goofs, and they're very good.
There are a lot of Goofs.
This is a good one for Goofs. It's not as ungoofy as Winter Soldier was, so I like the Goofs.
No, it's true. What are some of your bigger Goofs?
Oh, man, there's so many. Starting the beginning, I'm a big fan of Falcon and Black Widow's exchange, where he's like, say thank you. I'm not thanking it. His name is Red Wing. Go on, go on. Give him a little pat. I love that. Moving on, in the big airport fight, the Spider-Man everything is great.
Spider-Man,
you have the right to remain silent. That doesn't obey the laws of physics at all. Every line he has in that entire bit is great.
In that fight is probably where my favorite, at least, dialogue-based goof is, which is when Ant-Man shrinks down and goes into the Iron Man suit.
Yeah.
And he's just like, "Oh, you're gonna have to take this into the shop." and Iron Man's like, "Who's speaking?" And he's like, "It's your conscience. We don't talk a lot these days." That's a really good one.
Yes,
I like that one a lot. It's entirely because of Paul Rudd's delivery, because he's just really good.
Yeah.
Because I think my other really the big one is when with the same two people in the prison, when he's like, Hank Pym did say never trust a Stark. He's like, "Who are you?"
Yeah. Oh, come on.
And it's like, come on, man. And it's very reminiscent of like Guardians of the Galaxy,
Yes.
When he's like, you might know me from another name, Star-Lord. Star who? Oh, come on, man.
Yeah.
Star-Lord. It's really good.
Yeah.
I like those two a lot.
You like cats?
Yeah.
Which is just such a great line. I like every single line that Falcon delivers in this movie is gold. But I think my absolute favorite bit is okay. So, my runner up for favorite bit is Cap holding the helicopter, and then he flips his arm into the curl.
That's not a
Yes,
goof.
it is. I erupted laughing watching that. It's so good. It's meant to be a dramatic moment, but it's hilarious. Like it is. But the real actual favorite goof is when Cap shows up in the VW with Bucky and Falcon in it.
Yeah.
And Agent 13 is like, I'm not sure you're clear on the concept of a getaway car, and he's like, well, it's inconspicuous, and then it cuts to the car, and the Bucky is in the back, and he's like, can you move your seat forward? Falcon's just like, no, and then it cuts away for a second, then it cuts back, and Bucky shifts over.
Well, so one of my favorite sort of visual goofy bits was in that scene when Cap kisses Agent 13.
Right, and he
looks back at the car, and Falcon and Bucky are there giving him the
little nod.
Yeah, and I'm just like, this is great. This is the reason why I like these movies, because they take a second to just have fun with it and be like, yeah, you just kissed a girl. Good job, dude. Which I love. It's really good.
Yeah, that I love that sequence. It's so good. The cuts back are just perfect. Just absolutely perfect.
Yeah. All right. Well, where
no.
do
we have gripes? We haven't done gripes yet, James.
Oh, please.
What
gripes do you have?
I have one single gripe, and I'm going to ruin the movie for everybody from now until forever.
I highly doubt it, but let's hear it.
So, when Zemo is interrogating the Hydra agent in his house, he hangs him over a sink, which is filling with water. And the guy knows that the sink is going to fill up and it's going to drown him. Mm-hmm. Except that he's hung such that his nose and mouth are both above the line of the sink. So when the water does ultimately fill the sink, he is entirely capable of keeping his mouth and nose above the water level. But he says, "Hail Hydra," and then submerges his nose, but leaves his mouth is never even in danger of sinking below the water line. But he starts to drown anyhow, and it's like, dude, you can breathe. At worst, you're waterboarding yourself. You can breathe.
That is a pretty big nitpick. I think you're diving a little deep into this one.
Go watch that scene. You'll never unsee it.
Well, I mean, it's just so you're okay. So what you're saying is, you are annoyed with the framing of the shot.
Yes.
Because they could have reframed it in such a way that you would not be able to tell that.
Yes.
And to be honest, I literally watched it last night, and I remember that scene, and I don't remember it being in a spot where he would be just fine doing it. But
yeah, if you go back and watch that scene very carefully, you'll notice that his nose, he is never in danger of drowning. He is fully above the line of the sink.
All right. Well, you've ruined the movie for everybody forever.
You're welcome.
You suck.
I know.
Where do you put this movie, Matt?
Very high.
How high, though?
Very high.
Is it in your top 3?
It is.
So that means that something is leaving your top 3 today.
It does.
Because right now, your top 3 is Winter Soldier, Avengers, and then the second Avengers.
Yeah.
So what gets knocked out?
Ooh, it's tough.
Well, I mean, obviously the Avengers.
It's obviously in my top 3, but it's I love this movie. But
it's I guess it's not a question of which one gets knocked out. Avengers: Age of Ultron gets knocked out.
Yeah,
but
it's just, does it go ahead of Winter Soldier, behind Winter Soldier, or ahead of the Avengers, or behind the Avengers?
There's part of you that thinks this could be number 1.
There is part of me that thinks I love this movie.
That's fair.
But I think
feel like you should know where these are going to go before we start
I've been
recording.
thinking about it. I've been thinking about it, but it's sometimes it comes down to the wire when you make that final decision. I have to sit on it for a while and mull it over, and then talking through it with you helps me come to my conclusion. So
That's fair. Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
This one goes at number 3 behind the
All right.
Avengers.
So behind the Avengers, but ahead of Age of Ultron.
Yes, but I feel bad about that.
You feel? Oh, really?
Like, I want to put this movie at number 1, but I think it belongs at number 3.
Wait, you want? So you're not even willing to put it at 2?
It's tough. It's like I think I like this movie better than The Winter Soldier. I think The Avengers is a tighter, more concise film. Yeah, it's hard. Like there's like I said, there's a lot going on in this one. It does a lot that it does better than Age of Ultron does what it does. There is definitely a part of me that wants this to be at number 1. But maybe you're right. Maybe it goes at number 2. I think I've reconsidered. I think it goes at number 2.
Okay.
And I'm going to have to go watch this and The Winter Soldier back to back so that when we do our revisit, I know for sure which one is better.
That's fair.
But I love this movie. Seeing this in theaters was probably the most fun I had at a Marvel movie to that point. And I have been blown away by a lot of Marvel movies seeing them opening night in theaters, but I was riding on cloud 9 after this movie. It was basically just everything I wanted. So yeah, even putting it at number 2 feels like I'm selling it short.
Well, I can tell you that I easily slot this in at number 3. It is not better. For me, it is not better than Winter Soldier. It is damn close to the Avengers, but very, very little. So you just said that this is the most fun you've ever had going to an MCU film in the theaters. And for me, that probably will always, even though the Avengers is my number 2 film on this list, at least in terms of movie going experiences, the theater experience, nothing will ever beat the Avengers for me.
Yeah.
Just because it was just so.
It was the first time.
It was just the first time, and it's really hard to beat that first time.
Yeah, that's fair. You heard how much trouble I was having with this. I feel like it's a dead heat, right? We're talking millionths of a point.
All right, so Matt has put this at number 2. I have put this at number 3. So that knocks Iron Man out of my top 3 and Age of Ultron out of Matt's top 3, which is pretty exciting. Next week, we will be talking about... Is it Doctor Strange?
It's Doctor Strange. So
it is Doctor Strange.
Because, it's interesting because the after credit scenes in this movie don't correspond to either of the next 2 films.
Correct. But we'll get to that in a little bit, right?
Will we?
I don't know. Let's find out.
I don't know what you're talking about, James.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in once again this week. That was a lot of fun. As I said, we'll be back next week with some Doctor Strange and a proper 100% set schedule for what it is we're going to be doing in April, because we have quite a bit of, we have probably 2 weeks of doubling up, so we will make sure to hash out that schedule before next Tuesday when we record the Doctor Strange episode, and we will let you all know. But in the meantime, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for supporting us over on Patreon, patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. Of course, you can follow myself and Matt over on Twitter at James_LRR. That is me. Matt is at Matt_LRR. You can find links to our proper website and Matt's Twitch and YouTube channel in the description below. Matt just the other day caught up on all of his movies over on his YouTube channel.
I did. I knocked them out.
you did a bit of a lightning round for everything that you've seen up until recently.
Yeah, it's like a string of 8 3-minute vlogs.
Yeah,
just to get caught up. But yeah, it worked out.
Sweet. So you can go check those out. Check out the link below. And I think that'll just about wrap it up. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah, the bacon smells too good. I can't wait as long this time.
Oh.
There's bacon. There's bacon, Matt. I got to eat my bacon. All right. Let's chat here. We got a mid-credit scene. And this is a big one. This one actually ties into the post-credit scene of the most recent movie, which is Bucky Barnes is basically allowed into Wakanda along with Captain America. So it's kind of cool that they now are aware of what Wakanda... I mean, it's not something you really think about, but they are aware of what Wakanda is.
Yes. At
this point, right? Like, they know what's going on there.
Yeah.
Which is pretty big, so...
Yeah, they're invited in.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a pretty simple scene. It's basically just Bucky has made the decision that, until they can figure out how to get what Hydra put into his head out, that it would just be safer for everybody to just put him into cryo. Which I guess would lead to believe, again, talking about the most recent post-credit scene. So if you haven't seen Black Panther, this is a bit of a spoiler.
Just a little one.
But he's awake at the end of Black Panther. Just, he's just in Wakanda hanging out and stuff like that. So I guess maybe they figured it out, or maybe they just didn't figure it out and were like, we'll just take the risk.
I think the implication is clearly that they have deprogrammed him.
That would be my guess as well. But and then
we get to see the sweet panther.
Yeah,
statue.
The big panther statue, which is pretty dope. You don't see a whole lot of Wakanda, but the design of the space that he was in, like it was similar enough with the actual presumably he was in I can't remember her character's name, but his Black Panther sister's lab would be my guess.
Yeah,
is probably where he was. But yeah, clearly they designed that and said, here's what it looked like a few years ago.
Yeah,
maybe make it look like this a bit. And then there's the post-credit scene, which is just a tease at the new Spider-Man movie.
His suit's got a light that has a computer apparently. Hey.
Yeah. Which is like 3 movies from now?
Yes.
From where we're at right now, because we go Doctor Strange, we do Doctor Strange, Guardians 2.
Yeah. Then
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Then Thor, Black Panther, and then we're done. So, yeah, we're getting down to the wire.
I know.
5 movies left.
I know.
Of the 18 that are currently out. And then Infinity War. And somebody actually in the most recent episode said, hey, you should live stream the final episode. And yeah, that sounds like a good idea. It's actually something that Matt suggested. So
I suggested it based on somebody tweeting me about it. So I'm not the originator of that idea. I just thought it was a good idea.
That's fair. So maybe, I think that's actually something that we will do. So I guess we can talk more about it when we're getting a little bit closer, especially in the final 2 episodes. But we'll just mention it right now. We are seeing Infinity War Thursday, April 26th at 10 o'clock p.m.
Something like that. Enough time for me to get off the boat and get straight to the movie theater, basically.
Yeah. So 10 p.m. Pacific.
I better not miss that boat.
Yeah. So 10 p.m. Pacific, we're going to go see Infinity War. And then Matt and I are going to go back to the office. And
1 a.m. Pacific.
Something like that. We're going to set up. Actually, I'll make sure that we're set up ready to go.
Please make sure it's set up beforehand.
And then we'll go live. We'll record the podcast as we normally would. This time we'll do video as well. So if you are a listener or watcher of this podcast over on YouTube, then at least with this episode, you will be able to see our smiling faces. And yeah, we'll just live stream the
I hope we're
podcast
smiling.
portion. Yeah, I hope we're smiling too. We'll live stream the podcast version or the portion, and then give it a proper sign off, and then we can spend a little bit of time chatting with whoever is around at 2:30 in the morning our time, which I assume can't be many people, but you never know.
Hey, all of Europe will be awake, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's great for our European viewers and Asia and Australia.
Yeah. Will Infinity War have opened there by then? It usually, like, Marvel movies
Yes.
usually open
Yeah.
ahead of time in
Yeah, Australians
overseas, right?
especially will have been able to see it like several hours before us.
Oh,
easily.
all right.
So, but yeah, so you can look forward to that. So that's coming up. We'll do that April 26th, though technically the very early morning here of April 27th. Mm-hmm. But yeah, okay, we're for reals done this time. We'll talk to you all next week.